Welcome to the wonderful world of dance, bringing you exclusive interviews with top dancers and choreographers and reviews of the world's best companies across the globe. You can find lots more on our website at thewonderfulworldofdance.com.
Hi, this is Savannah Saunders, and today I'm thrilled to have Acclaimed Tamsin Fitzgerald, Artistic Director and Choreographer of the award-winning and physically adventurous 2Faced dance company. Tamsin is a trailblazer and a strong advocate for female choreographers. She has created a program specifically to address serious concerns about the lack of equality faced by female choreographers in the dance sector today. And with International Women's Day just behind us, this is an important subject to be explored and highlighted. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tamsin.
Hello.
Hi.
Hiya.
So,
Hiya.
Firstly, I'm really interested to learn a bit more about 2Faced Dance Company. You founded the company about 20 years ago. Tell us about 2Faced.
Yeah, so I moved back to Hereford, which is where I grew up after doing my dance training and having a brief kind of flirtation with being a professional dancer, and moved back and started working within the local community, running dance classes. Predominantly for boys, actually, because there were no classes for boys. So I've always had a kind of interest in kind of gender and ensuring that there's fair access to dance activities for both men and women. And I set up 2Faced Dance Company because it was a youth company. So it was working with boys who had potential, were really good at dance, but didn't really have the opportunity to access it. So that's kind of how the company was born. I set the company up. I took them to the Edinburgh Fringe, where we had great success with a series of shows, actually sort of commercial success. And as the company's kind of grown up, the dancers grew up from age sort of 14. They went off to train. I decided that actually to make the company a fully professional, full-time company, and that's what I've kind of done over the last 20 years. So I've kind of taken it from an all male boys dance group, which was unfunded, to a fully funded dance company that's professional and tours nationally and internationally. So it's been a bit of a journey.
Quite a journey, and even 20 years ago, that would have been quite a unique prospect, or proposition in terms of being a male company, that's quite innovative. I
think there was around that time there was a real problem with getting boys into dance in the UK, and I think I don't think I actually thought about there's a problem. I think I just thought in Hereford you can go to a ballet class or a tap class if you're a girl, but actually there are a lot of boys that want to do dance and there's no way of them kind of accessing that, or they felt embarrassed about joining a class with a load of girls, and they'd often have to go in a class that was like for little ones. So it was more about the need at the time in the place that I lived, in the community that I worked in. So it was innovative. I sat on many kind of panels around talking about how I was really successful in getting men into dance. I think that at one point there was 85% of boys that went to conservatoire training came from Hereford, and Hereford's a tiny little city, tiny. It's like 65,000 people, so it's a very small place. So that's quite a big number, really.
That is, and for listeners around the world, we're talking about, this is not central London.
No.
This is, as you say, a very small place.
Yeah.
But 20 years on, as the artistic director, what's your vision for 2Faced now?
I think the company's changed quite a bit over the years. We're touring much more. We're creating more work for different scales. So for outdoor work, indoor work, we're touring nationally and internationally. We've just come back from India. We're actually due to go to San Francisco and work with a company out there. So I think for me, there's two things. There's the development of the company, and then there's also the program, The Bench, that I founded, which is the new project that I'm looking at, that actually came from looking at me and my career and funneling all my time into getting more men into dance. And I suddenly realised, actually, what about what about me? It's me, a female, running this dance company. And then that started to bring up all these issues and questions and problems around women not having the same access to opportunity as men, as choreographers and leaders. So the vision really is to drive the company forward, to keep producing excellent artistic work, working with some amazing collaborators, to keep working within our local community, and to fight for women internationally.
That's absolutely amazing. And before we talk more about Bench, let's talk a little bit more about your own career. As a choreographer yourself, you've had an extensive and very successful career. You've collaborated with companies from around the world, from Australia to the Ballet Boys, which are obviously famous here in the UK and around the world. Tell us about your choreographic language. How would you describe your approach to choreography?
I normally say that I'm a bit of a movement junkie. I love to watch dance, which is very physical, and that's a physical from a kind of movement point of view, but also physical from an emotional point of view. So for me, I like to go into a theatre and watch things that I can't do, that I think are kind of a bit impossible. A bit like, I suppose, for me, when you go and watch a ballet, and actually when you first go and see a ballet and there's women on point and you're like, wow, how does that happen? How do they do that? For me, that's what moves me as an audience member, and I think that that's really influenced my work. So I like to work very physically. I like to push the boundaries of movement. I know lots of people say that, but I really try to kind of go beyond what a physical person can do. I like to work individually with the dancers that I've got in my company or on the commission I'm working with, because I think for me, dancers are far more than just a body. So I like to have their kind of their thoughts on the work or where we're moving forward with it. So it's quite a collaborative process, I think, the way in which I work. And I think, I love lifting work. I love the unexpected, I think. I think it has to emotionally connect and emotionally engage me in some way. So,
and when you talk about pushing the boundaries physically and working with the dancers, how does that interaction work when you're asking them to sort of go beyond their physical limits or to push those boundaries?
Yeah, I think I work from quite a sort of task-based starting point, and I think it's always a big ask to ask people to do that, to go beyond something, to move out of their comfort zone. But sometimes that's when the most exciting things can happen, because it's the things you don't expect to happen that just suddenly you're like, wow, actually, I wasn't expecting that. Let's use that. So I think it can be quite an exhausting process to get through, both physically and emotionally, and it takes a bit of time, but I think that the end results are often amazing, and I think dancers find it a really useful way of working, because I think sometimes when you're with a company for a long time, you're just churning out the same material. You've got to find something new in it, something fresh in it, and so I am really asking them to give to me a piece of them a little bit. So it's an exciting process, I think. Yeah.
And when you are looking for dancers to join your company, what characteristics, both physically and, as you say, more than just the body, that you look for in dancers? I
think there's sort of two things. I think there's one is what's really important is the dancer's personality, because obviously putting together a company of dancers can be actually more about personalities than it can be about bodies, because you're with those people all the time, so you have to be able to get on. So personality is important, drive is important. I look for performance before anything else, if that dancer can perform. So the technique is secondary to the performance quality that they can give. Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually, I have to say. So let's talk about Bench. I'm really interested to talk about this new program. And for listeners, Bench is a program which offers female choreographers in the UK training and mentoring, plus more, to empower women to have their choreographic and creative voice heard in the dance world today. This is, again, it seems like a very innovative project.
Yeah.
Tell me more about Bench.
Okay, so in around 2013, as an organisation, we were kind of reviewing all our work. We were reviewing what stakeholders and the public thought of us as a company, or how they perceived us. And one of the things to come out of that was that the dancers are male, because that's where it started from. But we sold ourselves as an all-male dance company, whereas in actual fact, the work had been predominantly created by a woman, myself, and I ran the company. And I suddenly realised that I was kind of selling myself short a little bit. And so I started sort of looking at what I'd done, and then there started to be these rumblings in the dance sector about the lack of opportunity for women as choreographers, how it's quite difficult to get your work upscaled, so to move from a small scale work to mid scale to large scale, how there seemed to be a kind of catapulting of male choreographers' careers from maybe doing something very small to suddenly appearing on a massive large stage. The same opportunities weren't available for women. So instead of kind of just sitting in there and talking about it, I decided, hey, let's see whether we can't put together a program that starts to make a shift or a change, not just for women, but also within the sector. So after about a year or a year and a half, the Bench happened. And the Bench came because I was watching actually an episode of Suits, and they were talking about lawyers, and they said something about stop sitting on the bench, you need to get off the bench. And one of them said, oh, well, women can't get off the bench. And I thought, actually, that's such a good name, the Bench.
Yep.
And we're always sitting on the sidelines and we're always watching. So in 2015, we launched the first year of the Bench. So we're now kind of in our second year of the program. And we have just also launched the program in India. So it's been a mad 18 months, I have to say, from something that was supposed to be quite a small part of what we do to becoming quite a big part of what we do.
It sounds like this program is fulfilling quite a, maybe not desperate need, but perhaps it's a desperate need actually for women and female choreographers in the UK. Why do you think women aren't being catapulted, as you give the example of the guys going from the small to the main stage?
I think there's a number of reasons. I think there is a kind of feeling that women aren't that confident, and I actually think that women don't approach companies for commissions in the same way that men do. That's not to say that men do it in the right way. It just comes across as being more confident in the way that they do that. I think that there is a historical, patriarchal way in which the dance world is run in this country, and that's actually quite a hard wall to break.
Yeah.
I think that it comes from the top. And, the bigger companies, the larger organisations kind of set that. So, Crystal Pike, for example, she's just done the Royal Ballet Commission. That's the first commission since 1998, I think, or 1999, where they've ever commissioned a woman. So that tells you something.
It's quite incredible, isn't it?
It is quite incredible. And I think we're having these conversations still. I know it's not the first time this has come up. This is an ongoing thing. But I think there is a sort of gender bias, an unconscious gender bias that happens as well within the arts.
Yeah.
I think that men as dancers are seen as something quite rare and quite special, because there's so few of them in comparison to women. So automatically they're seen as special, whereas women are just one of many. So some of it's historical, some of it's social. and some of it is just the way we are in society currently. But I think we're at a point where really we can't continue in this way. So we have to make a shift change.
Absolutely. There has to be more female choreographers. I recently interviewed Rosie Kay of Rosie Kay Dance Company. And we touched on this particular topic of one which I'm, very, very interested in. And I think a program like Bench is so important today, to get women involved and the female voice heard, both, on stage and, beyond.
Audiences, I think audiences need access to those voices. We need to be able to hear and see a range of different voices, not just men, not just women. It might be trans voices. We need to hear and see everything.
Absolutely.
And seeing one thing, then I think that's quite sad.
It's quite limiting, isn't it?
Very limiting, and also then there's no role models for younger women coming up through the sector. And I mentioned Crystal Pite, but she is often the only female choreographer that is talked about in the press. And actually, there's hundreds of women working across this country and across internationally as choreographers and as artistic directors and leaders. And let's hear their names. Let's hear them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's our responsibility as women together, but also I think it's the responsibility of men to make that happen.
And the dance industry itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So with the Bench, it's about training choreographers and giving them the opportunity to build their confidence and to speak clearly about their artistic work and their voices are heard. But it's also about bringing the sector together. We had a conference last year as part of the International Dance Festival in Birmingham, and that brought together around 90 people that work in the sector, from Sadler's Wells down to independent artists, to discuss the issues of gender and the performing arts and where is it all going wrong and what can we do more of. So it's a kind of three-pronged approach, really. It's working with choreographers, it's working with organisations, and it's working with kind of funders and the Arts Council and people like that. So, yeah. And
the Bench program, when is the next round opening up? Is it coming up soon where perhaps, choreographers listening will be able to apply anytime soon?
Yeah, so we are currently in our second year, which doesn't finish until November of this year. So the next round will open up actually next spring.
Okay.
So it's a wee while yet, but it will be on the Bench website, and we have a kind of network and newsletter as well, so it'll be on there, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So yeah.
And so 2Faced is actually touring a triple bill called Run that includes choreography by yourself, but also from a female choreographer who's been through the Bench program, as well as another choreographer. Tell us about the three pieces of work and the other two choreographers alongside yourself.
Sure. So as part of the first year of the Bench, we decided to kind of put our money where our mouths are and commission another female choreographer who really has only created small work to go into mid-scale venues. So Rebecca Evans, who's actually an American choreographer that now lives in the UK, was commissioned, and she's created a great piece. It's a duet called The Other. And it uses these lights, digital lights that go on and off with movement. They're sensory, and that really explores migration and that feeling of having a lot of everything around you being about fear, really, and being scared of the future or what's to come. So her piece is it's quite an emotional piece, actually. It's a great piece, great movement language, very different to my movement language. So that's nice. Then the third piece is called Fallen Angels. That's by Lenka Wagnerova, who's a Czech choreographer. And I'd kind of seen her work on and off for a number of years at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. and in Prague, and she creates very kind of theatrical work. It's a very strong narrative. It's about demons that are cast down, and it kind of relates to how it's very easy for humans to move to the dark side, and it explores our relationship as a group of angels or devils, and that's a very theatrical piece. That's the last piece. It's got a great score created by a composer called Thomas. So it's got a real kind of rock sound. It's a little bit Pink Floyd, actually.
Okay.
It's fantastic. And then my piece, From Above, that explores the idea that the influence really of social media on ourselves, and that we don't really have our own opinions anymore. We're just consuming the opinions of everybody else. So we just are kind of going around in this cog, this circle, where we don't actually have our own morals or ethics. We're just borrowing them from the things that we read on social media channels and things. So that my piece explores that, and that's called From Above. So it's an interesting triple bill. It's quite a complementary triple bill, and I kind of curated it in a way so that it feels quite relevant. It was kind of created post-Brexit. You've got a Brit, a Czech choreographer, and an American. And it was all created during Brexit and Trump time. So it feels fairly relevant, I think, as an audience member when you're watching it.
Absolutely. You're talking about social media influence, talking about the culture of fear, about, the good and the evil. It's very relevant. I think it sounds like an exciting triple bill. And it's touring, well, it's on tour, but it's picking up again from the 31st of March, going through till May across the UK. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. We're in London on the 4th and 5th of April. So, yeah.
I'm coming down on the 4th, I think it is, to see Run, which I can't wait to see. I also wanted to ask you about your own experience as a female artistic director and choreographer, and about some of the challenges that you've personally faced and had to overcome. Yeah,
I think when I first started out, I think not anymore. I look quite old now, but I used to look quite young, and people would often not take me seriously or think I was kind of 19 when actually I was like in my mid-30s, and there was a little bit of that going on. I think I have sometimes felt like, even though I've created work or co-collaborated with other people, that somehow my voice was lost in all of that, and somehow I got referred to as an assistant choreographer rather than a co-collaborator, and that the males would always get the press, and I wouldn't even get a mention, really. So I kind of feel like sometimes I've been the choreographer with no name, which is interesting. I think I've always had to create my own opportunities. So I've always had to, if I wanted something to happen, I would just make it happen, and I'd get on and I'd write my funding bid, and I'd make sure that, I managed to get the money to go on tour. Whereas I feel perhaps that's not the same challenge for men, because I feel like perhaps a woman will always do that for them. Yeah. So I think there's an interesting thing there about how women are with other women as well, within this sector, and you need that support. So I think I face quite a lot of challenges, but some people say that I'm a bit of a solutions person, so that even if there's a challenge, I see a solution. So to try and overcome it. And I think to a certain extent, you create your own opportunities in life. And I think one of the issues for me is that I have made a very conscious decision not to live in London and not be based in London, and to be based in quite a rural community. Part of that is accepting the fact that I won't get offered those same opportunities that I would if I lived in London. So I think, it's an interesting journey that I've been on the last 17, 18 years, and there will continue to be more challenges as life gets more difficult. Funding gets pulled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Education is changing.
Yes.
I think the one thing remains, though, is that as artists, we have a responsibility to have an impact socially, politically. We can't just be there for entertainment.
Absolutely.
That's how I see it, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted to ask this earlier, but I completely forgot. I wanted to find out, it's an interesting name, 2Faced.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind that? I've been dying to ask that question.
It really is just the two different sides of our company. So from when we originally started, the kind of community and education work we do, and then the performance work we do. When we first started, we did both. I think sometimes there's quite a lot of companies that start off as performance companies, and then they attach the community and education work to what they do, sometimes because they need to do so for funding purposes. So actually it kind of demonstrates that our commitment to community and education work and performance, the two sides from the off, really. So that's why. And also because we appear at the top of lists on everything.
That's great.
So we always hear about things first, which is quite handy.
That is excellent. And finally, what advice would you give to other aspiring female choreographers out there trying to establish themselves in the dance world today?
I think I would say don't be afraid of asking for what you want, because people can only turn around and say no, but if you never ask, you'll never know if you're going to get that. So if you need to get free rehearsal space, or you want to work and get with a certain person who you think is probably out of your league, just ask. They can only say no. So just don't be afraid. That's what I would say.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
No problem.
And I hope we've inspired some female choreographers out there to apply for the next intake in spring of the Bench program. You can learn more about 2Faced and Bench on the website twofaced.co.uk, where you can also book tickets to the UK tour of Run, which sounds like an amazing triple bill, and I can't wait to see it next month myself. Thank you so much, Tamsin.
Don't forget to subscribe. We've got some incredible interviews coming up with principal ballerinas and renowned choreographers. We love dance and ballet, and we hope you'll love us. Join us on Facebook and Twitter.